All right. Hello, everyone. Seems like we have a bit of a quorum here. So good morning, good afternoon. I don't think we have any good evening individuals, but if it's evening wherever you are, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And today we have Tableau Tuesday presents tips and tricks. Try and say that 10 times fast. Tableau Tuesday tips and tricks. So I'm glad you're all joining us today. This is actually our last Tableau Tuesday of the year. So let's finish off the year with a little bit of fun. We always like to do our tips and tricks. It's always a very popular session at Tableau Conference and even in individual sessions in our accounts. So always very popular, nice and fun, keep it pretty loose. And today, I am your host. My name is Brianna Newman. I'm a Senior Solution Engineer over here at Tableau. And let's go ahead and get rolling here. All right, so just to put a face to the voice, that's me, that's my face. I'm going to be driving our presentation today, but I absolutely could not be doing this alone. Also on the line, I also have my extremely talented colleagues, and they're going to be helping out in that Q&A section, most notable of which is Mr. Steve Martinez. He makes all of our Tableau Tuesdays possible, and he puts a ton of effort into these, so a special thank you to him for setting all of that up. I was going to put his face on the slide, but I couldn't find a picture, so you lucked out this time, Steve. All right, so I figured we're going to be spending about an hour together today, and I thought it would probably be some good social currency to tell you maybe something interesting about me. So a funny fact about me is that I actually make my own desktop wallpapers. That's what I like to call it. Some people say that I enjoy photography. I'm kind of resistant to that. I really just like being outside, and photography is a means of bringing the outside in with me. So thankfully, it's pretty easy to take decent photographs or good enough for your desktop wallpaper when the places you go are so beautiful. So this is definitely a hobby that pays off around this time of year when I have no idea what to get my friends and family. And so printing a couple of photos that I took through the year, that's a pretty good way to come up with some last minute gifts. If you ever need a hobby that you want to pick up and you're kind of a last minute person like myself, that's definitely a pro tip for me. First tip of the day. Doesn't have to do with Tableau, but technically a tip. All right, so a couple of quick housekeeping items. So we have a lot of folks joining today, and we do have everyone muted by default. It's nothing personal, just kind of the normal etiquette of these types of webinars. So even though we do have you muted, we do want to hear your questions. So if you have a question for the Tableau team, go into the ellipsis option in the WebEx and select the Q&A. The Q&A is just a little bit easier for keeping track of which questions have and have not been answered, and it's a little bit more succinct than the chat. Of course, if you put something in the chat, I don't think we'll ignore you by any means, but do try to avoid the chat. It just kind of helps us keep our ducks in a row. So I'm going to make a quick promise to you. This is actually my last slide of my presentation. We're going to be working mostly in Tableau. So here's our agenda. We're going to be looking at things that, or tips in Tableau that are going to make working in Tableau easier, faster, or more inspired. You know, it's been a full year. It's been a very robust year full of events, we'll say. And maybe you're kind of getting into a rut, or you're getting used to using Tableau in the same way, and we build these habits over time. So hopefully with this presentation, a couple of new tips and tricks, maybe you'll have a revived passion for Tableau, or at least know how to get to where you're going faster or in a more creative way. So that's what I'm working toward. Again, we're keeping it pretty loose, kind of some random use cases, see what we come upon. So let's go ahead and jump into desktop. All right, so we're actually going to start in our data source tab today. So let's say we just inherited this workbook. Maybe our coworker got it from another coworker, maybe they left the position, and you're just trying to get to know this data a little bit more. What are our options for looking at the underlying data? Maybe we don't want to touch this yet. We don't really know what's going on there. How can we view what each of these tables has underneath it? So when I hover, we'll get this kind of Excel looking icon. And you might see this in a couple different places in Tableau, but overall, if we wanted to take a peek at what each of these tables have in it, we have a quick way to view that data in kind of an Excel-like format. So this is on the data source tab, but let's say we are building a view. How could we look at our underlying data when we're building a view? Well, you're going to see a very similar icon here next to that search icon. So we can view our tables here. Each of them will have their own tab, and it's going to take a moment to load. And then one last place that you'll find this icon is actually in your view. So if I click on a point, we'll see that icon one more time, and we can actually see what is going into that point. So this is great if you have maybe some questionable data. It just feels wrong. You don't know what actually is going into that particular number. You can always go into that underlying data and poke around and see if maybe there's something you're missing, or maybe you're getting way too much. So for getting familiar with data or being able to view that underlying data, those are the three places you can always go to view that underlying data. Another tip and trick we have here, let's say that we want to add another table. So we can always go into our connection pane. We can choose the file type we want to connect to. We can dig through our files. I don't organize my files very well. Sometimes it takes me some time to find it. And oh, maybe I don't remember that a CSV is actually a text file. There's a lot of things that can kind of slow you down in that interaction. Let me show you one alternative. What you can do, let's go back one maybe. Oh, it moved, 1 second. So it's on my desktop. So one thing that you can do is just click and drag. So I had that icon living on my desktop. Apparently I have moved it. So we can just click and drag, and now we have that data subset as one of our connections. So let's take this one step further. Maybe you can't be bothered to even save your file, maybe put it into some sort of organizational pattern, and then click and drag once you ultimately find it on your desktop. So one alternative, this is just a subset of the data that was already in here, but for demonstrative purposes, what we can do is we can actually just copy our spreadsheet here, go into Tableau, and click paste. So it's going to take a moment or so as it tries to make sense out of what information you just flung at it. Of course, there's not a whole lot of structure to the copy and paste, so it might take a moment or so, but that's kind of the one small drawback to just flinging a clipboard of information into Tableau. And it'll come on as a clipboard with an identifying number, timestamp, that sort of thing. And now you can just map your fields and you're off and going. So adding data into your data pane, very easy. We'll remove this so it doesn't mess with us later. All right, one last tip for our data pane before we get to the good stuff in visual analytics. Let's say we have a product name that has changed. My scroll isn't working super great. There we go. And we want to change what it looks like in our workbook because we don't want everyone peppering us with questions. Hey, actually, the 2-ring binder is now a 3-ring binder, for example. So what we can do is right click. I guess I kind of skipped over that part. We'll go into the down arrow, go into aliases, and here we can alter any of these titles. So let's say maybe the 3-ring is now a 2-ring staple pack. I don't know why that would happen, but humor me. So we have a 2-ring staple pack, and now we can change just that label that's sitting on top of the data. This isn't going to reach into your database or your spreadsheet or change any of that core underlying data. It's just going to match a new alias to the existing product name. And we'll have an asterisk here so we know which ones we've changed. And of course, if we make a mistake or if we just want to go back to how our aliases were, we can clear all of them with one click. Very easy. So we'll click OK. And let's actually get into building some views. So you might have already gotten a look at this. I've already showed this a couple of times. But starting off our visualizations with a very exciting talk about keyboard shortcuts. I know it's not the most exciting, but these are very important and we're going to use them later on. So bear with me. Trust me, this is going to be very beneficial. So for a full list of the keyboard shortcuts, there's a lot of them. You can click, or it's a quick Google search, and just search Tableau keyboard shortcuts. But here's a couple of my favorites. So in purple, I have the Mac shortcuts, and they're bolded as well in case there's a contrast issue. And then the blue is going to be more Windows. So some of my favorites, Command Control, and then an arrow key. That's going to expand out your tables. If you go down, it's going to make them more narrow. If you go up, they're a little bit taller. So this is a quick way that you can just kind of resize your tables quickly without having to take your hands off of the keyboard. Another fun one, Command and 1 is going to open the Show Me menu, and that's kind of a fun one. Another useful one that I use a lot is Option and click drag. On Windows, it's going to be a right-click drag. So, for example, if I wanted to go and pull an order date out into my view, I'm holding down my Option key right now. And when I release that, I'll automatically get this Options menu. So it will do this for all of your different types of data you're pulling in. For a date, it's going to ask you what date part you want. If you're doing a measure, it's going to ask you what kind of aggregation you want. Even if you do a dimension, it'll ask you if you want minimum, maximum, count distinct, etc. So if you find yourself clicking, dragging, dropping down, and then getting into this menu, this will save you about 3 clicks. So again, just trying to work more efficiently. One more, and this is probably the one that I use the most often, is our Command/Control drag. So this is a very popular one in the Tableau community, but if I hold my Command key, I'm doing that right now, I can grab a pill and I can duplicate it. So I don't have to come all the way over to my data pane, drag it all the way out. I only have to move my mouse this far and just going to keep duplicating it until the cows come home. So lots of categories. I think it's cutting me off now. So this will come into handy later when we start doing dual axes. It's a very quick way to duplicate your chart and change one, leave the other one the same, for example. But as always, if any of these are interesting to you, or if you're a big hotkey person, we have a shortcut for pretty much anything. I think there's a shortcut to pull up a calculation. I think it's like Alt-Command-D, something like that. But yep, if you want all of them, they are right here. All right, so I promised things would get more exciting, and I'm finally going to follow through on that promise. So this is a really popular use case that I think could be used more, actually. So let's say we have a chart that looks something like this, and we want to maintain the integrity of this original chart even when we start filtering. So let's see here. Let's get rid of some of these subcategories. Maybe we'll get rid of phones. Maybe we'll get rid of furnishings, copiers, art, appliances, accessories. But we'll see as we start unclicking those subcategories, my line is going to start kind of melting. It kind of has that effect, I suppose. But in the background, we have that kind of shadow of the original graph that's going to remain unchanged. So how we do this is a dual axis chart. And one line is just a typical line that you would see. And then the secondary line, the area chart, is going to be a level of detail calculation. So don't let that scare you. We'll make it pretty approachable. So let's see here. We're working with month and sales. So let's build this out. So I'll do my option, hold option, order date up to columns. And now we want month, click OK. Then we'll grab sales. See, we're already halfway there. We've already built our sales graph. This should look very familiar, just doesn't have the shadow. So let's build that secondary, that shadow, that background color, the area graph. So this is actually going to be a calculation. So we'll start with creating a calculated field. We'll call this one shadow. And let's take a look at what we want to use for our fixed calculation. There we go. So looking at what this graph is fixing to, we have month, March, we have year, 2017, and then we also have sum of sales. So that's easy enough. So we can grab year of the order date, And then we'll also grab month of the order date, since that's the level of detail of the view, colon, sum of sales, and then curly bracket. And calculation is valid. Let's go ahead and okay that. Then we'll drag that up onto the view. Okay, so it looks like we've done something right. We have two views that look exactly the same. We have, if you don't work with dual axes often, our marks card is going to look a little bit different. This first drop down is going to control our first chart, our sum of sales, this pill here, and our second one is going to control our shadow. So we want to change this to an area chart so we get that shadowy effect, and we'll want to wash that out just a little bit so it's kind of ghost-like, very spooky. Okay, so since we want to smash these two views together, we want to go in and dual axis. There's two different ways you can dual axis. I tend to go to the pill, but you can also go to the axis as well. So dual axis, and as always, we want to synchronize those axes so they stick together as one. And yes, it did synchronize. And then maybe we'll change that color for blue just to stay in theme here. And then I believe last, all we need to do is add our subcategory as a filter. And let's just start unchecking things and make sure that we have that same effect. So it looks like we're successful. It looks like we're able to replicate that view. This is a really great view to have in case you want to maintain the top line finding of the graph, but also give your viewer a little more exploration room in changing the data with still being able to compare it to the total. All right, so since we started with LODs, let's go a little bit easier on this one. So let's say you have maybe a chart like this. With a chart like this, I actually have a percent difference table calculation here. So we have a percent difference from, and it's relative to previous. Why is that important? Well, we'll take a look down here at January. January doesn't have a previous. No matter how hard we try, the nature of the calculation is always going to give us 0 for January. So to get rid of that, some people don't like having that 0, mainly because of misinterpretation of graphs. But it could be tempting to just click on January and click exclude. That should get rid of it, right? Wrong. So February is just going to become the previous. So that's not going to solve our issue, and I'm going to undo Command Z, another keyboard shortcut. Another option, and of course you can do this in the table calculations as well, but my favorite is to right click on January and just click hide. And there we go. It's not going to change the underlying function of that calculation. It's just going to hide January so no one freaks out that there's no data there. So that's a quick one. I like to keep that in my back pocket. All right, so I think all of us have made kind of a very messy, noisy type of graph like this. And maybe I am not a big fan of this myself. So I only care about where we started and where we ended. I don't care as much about what happened in the middle. So of course we can make a slope chart, or even easier than that, we can just select some points that we want to exclude. So again, I excluded those first couple of points on purpose, and then we'll do all the way out to the end and make sure we keep those. So with a right click, we can exclude the points in the middle. And now we have a really quick slope chart. You probably want to hide that header so no one gets confused. And now we know where we started and where we ended. So very quick, get rid of the noise. Great way just to show the difference. All right, moving right along here, we have another area chart. I've been playing a lot with these lately. I think they're very artistic and fun to play with. So let's say I have a chart like this, but I want it to be green, or not green, let's do blue. Blue for our positive values and orange for our negative values. But I don't want to write a calculation. Of course, I can do an if-then or on color, all sorts of things. But there's even an easier way. So I'm going to use our keyboard shortcut, our Command Hold, and I'm going to duplicate our profit pill. So now we have two identical views. And this first one, I want to only have the top on the bottom, I only want the bottom. So we can do our exclude hack that we've been doing a good amount during this presentation, but instead I'm going to the axis. I'm going to come down to fixed, and I want to fix that axis to 0. So we only want to include our positive values. So we'll click OK there, and then we'll do it one more time, but the opposite. So we'll fix it, and then the end will be 0. So it's only going to capture our negative values. So now we have a graph that looks eerily similar to the one that we had at the beginning, but the difference is that we can go into color and play with different colorings and have two charts that look a little bit different. We could even change this to a line if we wanted to, if we didn't want to do a full area. It gives you a little bit more creative freedom with how you're going to display your positive and negative values. And it gives you the freedom of kind of a dual axis, but not quite. So that's kind of a fun one. Just gives you a couple of other options, I suppose. All right, we interrupt these very lovely views with a very real human factors problem that I encounter quite often. And usually this happens during a demo. So I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. So let's say I can't find something. Oh no, region is gone. Where is region? I can never find region. Tableau has this really charming habit where it closes all of my folders. I'm sure it does it to you too. It's not just me. And sometimes I can't find things. So what are my options if I can't find a pill? Well, search is one, so I can always go into region, and it's going to finally expand out that collapsed folder and say, hey, ding dong, region is right here. But one that also came to me recently is that you can just start typing it. And there you go. So no more excuses for me for not being able to find a pill. I can always go into that search bar, or I can just start typing it into the row. Kind of in the same vein, you can write inline calculations here as well. So we could do like sum of sales, for example, and get a really annoying chart that should look a little bit more like that. But you can make an entire view without even clicking and dragging. I know Tableau is all about clicking and dragging, but if you are, if you're as challenged as finding some of the pills as I am, sometimes just typing them into the shelf is a good option. All right, so back to crazy calculations. That was a nice breather in how we can find things, but let's talk a little bit about table calculations and how we can make them work a little bit harder for us. So let's say we have this table calculation. I don't even know what I made. I just tried to make it look as confusing as possible. So we have a difference from relative to first, it's going table of cross, but maybe I don't remember all of those settings. Maybe I need to recreate this table calculation again in another view, but I don't remember exactly what I did, and it's going to take a lot of time to compare the two, make sure they're the same. So what we can do with table calculations, much like most other pills and calculations, is we can hold Command, grab it, and pull it into the data pane. So it's going to come right down here, and it's going to give me the opportunity to rename it. So we can call this table calc, for example, and then we can take this one step further. So this allows me to reuse this in another view later, of course, but also I can take a look at what's happening under the hood. So of course, the table calculation builder in the UI is fantastic and I love it. But if you're looking to kind of expand your boundaries with Tableau calculations, this might be a good place to start to actually understand what's going on under the hood. So we have a zero null, sum of profit. We should probably all know that one. But oh, what does a lookup do? What about a first? So if you're into that kind of unraveling, working backward type of problem solving, I would recommend making a nasty table calculation and saving it so you can take a look at what's going on underneath. So kind of dual purpose here. You can save it, use it later, or you can do some alterations or try to teach yourself something with the table calculation. All right. So a common question that a lot of viewers have working with Tableau is how fresh is this data? Do I know if it's up to date? Did something change or not? Did the data come in? And this is actually pretty quick. So with Tableau, we can edit the title of our view. And if you haven't worked with this before, there is an insert menu in the upper right-hand corner. So this is actually going to be full of a bunch of merge fields. So merge fields being dynamic, automatically propagating type of titles that aren't going to be static. So for example, I have data update time. If I wanted to put my name here, I could. Let's see what that does. I don't think I'm gonna like it. Oh, it middle named me. That's embarrassing. So let's see here. You can always put in that data update time, so it's very transparent to your users when that data was last updated. I have just opened this workbook at 8:43, so that seems pretty accurate to me. One other thing I wanted to highlight on this view is having more than one pill on color. And this is actually pretty easy. So we'll drag these guys off quick, and we just kind of get a boring gray bar chart. But using our hold command again, we can copy region, bring that onto color. Now we have it color coded. And then we'll hold command one more time, grab category, and put it onto detail. So not onto color. If we put it onto color, it's just going to change the color. So undo. So category onto detail. And this is a very subtle thing that Tableau does. You can click on these little icons and change what shelf that item is on. So with category, I'm just going to change it to color. And I can always switch these around in case I want to change how it's reading those colors. So I prefer that. And this is a quick way to get more than one color onto that color shelf and have it be a little bit gradiated and still really pretty to look at. All right. So let's talk a little bit about highlighting. I love highlighting. I love the utility of it. By and large, I think it's a little bit underutilized to the full extent that it can be. So I think when I started using Tableau, I would use highlighting like this. I would just go and click on furniture, for example. Okay, there's all of my points for furniture. Yeah, highlighting, so cool, right? But we can take it a lot further. So we have a number of items on color, detail, etc. And with any of these, I could turn on show highlighter. I won't do it for order ID. It's going to look pretty bad, but I already have it shown for customer name over here. So let's say I want to find a particular customer. Let's search a name that's kind of like mine. Let's look for Brian. Maybe we want to see Brian's orders. And we'll see as I kind of go through different Brians that all of their orders will be highlighted. So let's look at Brian Dolan. So I can go here, I can click on this point, and then with highlighting, we can actually click on other orders. So if we click on that order ID, we can see what other objects were included in that order. So highlighting is going to be doing a lot for us in this case. We can click on storage, I'm going to highlight a couple of those. Also, it works in reverse. So let's say I want to know who this outlier is. It looks like Sean Miller. So if I click on that point, we have Sean Miller in that tooltip. It looks like it's already kind of highlighting them. But I can click on those and I can see what other items he has ordered in the past. So highlighting, a lot cooler than just showing us that the colors jump out when you click on the category. All right. So this is a fun one. This is actually a use case that I've showcased in the past, but I just love it so much I wanted to show it one more time. So Tableau does a really great job of hierarchies. So we have region here. If we wanted to drill down into what country, very useful field here for country. And we can keep drilling down into state. We could even get into city if we wanted to. But the problem with this is that it's going to drill down for everything, every single city and every single state in, well, a single country. But what if we don't want to drill into everything? What if we only wanted to drill into a single region? So if I click on East, it's only going to show the region that I have in mind and the states that are in those regions. So this is actually pretty easy to do. It leverages a set action and a calculation as a trigger. So let's go ahead and build that. Let's see here. All right, we're doing profit. So let's grab, oh, here is that moment where I can't find my pills. There we go. Profit. And we also want region. Grab region. And now what we want to do is create a set on region. So we'll right click on region, create, set, and we'll just keep this as region set 2 since I already have one region set in here from my example. We'll click OK. And we can actually put that onto the shelf as a little helper. So since nothing is in the set right now, it's all going to say out. One more step with this, we need a trigger. So we'll call this state trigger. And this is just going to be an if-then statement. So if region set 2, then state, else, double quotes, end. So what this is going to read is if it is a member of region set 2, then return the state. Otherwise, don't show us anything. And that's basically all this is doing. So we'll go ahead and click OK. And then we're going to add that to the row shelf as well. It's a party on the row shelf. So right now, if I start clicking around, it's not going to do anything. We need one more step, and that's going to be adding an action, a set action. So we'll go into worksheet, come down to actions, and then we'll add an action and a set value. So we'll call this set action number 2, that's fine. We'll work with regional set number 2, and then we'll just add that final option for clearing the selection. This will just make sure that when I click off, it's going to clear the set and not keep everything accumulating. So we'll click OK. OK. And then we'll just start clicking. We'll see what happens. OK, so when I click on East, one thing you'll probably immediately notice is that the state trigger is going to expand, and also it's going to be an in member of that set. So once it becomes in, it's going to expand that set. And when I click to a different one, it's going to expand that instead. So this has a lot of different options for improving your dashboards. If you have a dashboard that has drilling in and out hierarchies, this can really speed things up as well. All right, so let's jump into mapping for just a little bit, keeping an eye on time here. So I have a map, looks fairly familiar, but with maps, we have map layers. And one thing that I think is underutilized is that you can get rid of that base layer. You can even get rid of the land cover. We can effectively make this look like a coloring book page. So what do we do with coloring book pages? We can go into format and we can change that background. So maybe we want the background to be yellow. Maybe we want it to be blue. You can change this to be any color that you have in your dashboard, maybe an accent color that you've been looking for. Again, just kind of giving it a facelift so it looks a little bit different from all the other maps that you've probably made in the past. So you can do black, make it a little bit of a dark mode, super exciting. So a couple of options here. As always, that map layers is going to be your friend. So if we want to put that base back on, we can, or we can take it back off. All right, so we've done a couple of different dual axis maps through this presentation, or we've done dual axis charts, but we haven't done a dual axis map. That's what I'm trying to say. So here we have a fill map and a point map. And oftentimes, let's just go ahead and reverse engineer this. So what if we undo the dual axis? Now we can see that each chart is a little bit different. And we'll see that we just kind of duplicated our latitude. So this was the original chart. We can hold Command and duplicate that pill. And maybe we change a couple of things here. Maybe we add city to detail. And now we have all these points. Maybe we want to put, I don't know, region on color here. So we get dots in different colors. It's going to look a little bit different than our original. And now we can dual axis this. And now we can have 2 different levels of information that we can look at within our map. So dual axising, not just for line charts, not just for area charts, it's also for maps. All right, So next on the kind of order of things, we have a hex map. And I'll give you one guess as to why we call it a hex map. It's fairly self-explanatory, but overall, these types of maps might look familiar, and it's for a good reason. Research has shown that there can be some biases in how your viewer interprets your data based on how large some of the states are. So for example, I can backtrack here, and it's easy for us to interpret discount as being kind of out of control simply because Texas is big and orange. And that's not Texas's fault, it's just big state. So your viewer might walk away from this map thinking, oh my goodness, we're doing way too much discounting, what are we going to do? When in reality, the same map with a different kind of color scheme, but the same map with all of the land equal is going to give us a different interpretation of that data. So making a hex map, really pretty easy. So there are some people out there that are pretty hardcore with this and make a ton of hexagons in a PowerPoint presentation and then put it in a spreadsheet for the X and Y coordinates. I would not recommend that in the least bit. There's a lot of these documents floating around on the internet, most of which from my colleagues. So you might have seen at the beginning of this presentation that I had a hex map plot here, and that is actually just, let's see here, I actually have it open on Excel. So it's going to have our row, column, state, abbreviation. So it's really just arranging all of these points into a coordinate grid. Very easy. Give it a quick Google. That Excel sheet is probably one of the first items to come up. So once we have that joined into our data, it's really pretty quick. So we can go to row, column to column, and then we'll do state to detail. And we can see it's kind of starting to take shape a little bit, but we need to flip it upside down. It's looking a little bit disoriented. Okay, so now we're starting to get our shape here. One last step though, I mean, right now we have a circle map, but it's actually called a hex map. So we want them to kind of nest nicely together. So we'll want to go into more shapes. And I've gone and saved a custom shape in my Tableau repository. And for some reason, it's in KPI. I don't know why. I should move it one of these days. But once I click OK, we'll see some tiny hexagons popping up. We'll make those bigger so you believe me. All right. So now it's starting to look about right. Let's add our abbreviation to the label. Allow the marks to overlap. Make it center. And then we probably want to make that white. Now we can see the different states, and then maybe we'll put something else on color just to make it exciting. All right, so just a couple of cleanup items. Hide the headers. So it's kind of floating and it doesn't look as much like a chart and a little bit more like a map. And now we can go into format, hide all of our grid lines and our zero lines, and boom, there you have it, a hex map. So really not as scary as they might look. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about formatting. I think we're all kind of guilty of making a highlight chart a little bit like this, myself included. We have a lot of measure values in our measure shelf and a lot of measure names as well. So what if we don't want all of these color palettes? Well, we can change them all. They're using independent palettes. But what if we don't want count of people to be kind of subject to all the different blue colors? One trick that I have seen is you can create a custom palette. So we'll go edit the colors, come down into custom diverging, and then set them both to white. So when I do that, it's going to white out that whole row, and it's not going to have the same coloring as the rest of the rows. So if you do have a highlight table like this and you are tearing your hair out about, okay, I don't want this one row to be colored. How do I change that? This is how you do it. So someday you'll come across it if you haven't already, and you'll think back to this presentation and you'll be like, oh yeah, I can do the custom format. All right. So in the vein of formatting, let's say we've made this not the most beautiful chart I've ever made, but you can definitely tell that I've reformatted it. So also rule of thumb, if you want to format something, right click on it and go into format, and it'll take you right to where you need to go in that formatting menu. So we'll see that I have some red tick marks. You can't see those very well. I promise that they're there. And we also have some dotted lines. So let's say that maybe I want to generalize this format to several different sheets that I'm working with. Do I have to go into each of the menus? No, I don't. So thankfully with Tableau, we can right click, copy that formatting, and then we can go to a view that might be kind of similar, and then we can paste it in. So the good news is we can have these terrible dotted teal lines in all of our views. I know I'm excited. So before we do leave this formatting menu, I did want to highlight the tendency to get lost in the formatting menu. Sometimes you might not remember what you changed or what you've altered, and you just want to go back to the default. So any of the items that you've changed are going to have a bolded heading. So that's kind of dual purpose. You know that you changed it, and secondarily, you can right click on it and go into clear. So you can go back to default really quickly, which we should do because that formatting that I showed you is really not my best work. Okay, so scooting right along here, we have easy buttons. So makes me think of that old commercial. Anyways, you can use buttons very easily in Tableau dashboards, but there's actually an easier way. So let's say we want to ultimately create a button that will be clicked, and that's going to apply some filters or something like that. So what we can do is create a calculated field. We'll call this button, maybe. And I'm just going to put in double quotes what I want that button to say. I'm going to say push me, let's say. Click OK, and then we can drag that onto a label. So from there, we can do formatting. We can make it a little bit bigger. Of course, we can make entire view. We can format it, change the background, etc. But what this is going to do, it's going to give you a new element that you can click on. So I have the perfect use case for this, and I'm going to show you the reverse dashboard first. And this is something that that I've really taken to recently. Let's say you have a very granular dashboard. It has a lot of kind of row level data, and it's really slow. So let me propose to you an alternative. So rather than having all of your data that you need to pull back from filters, instead you can establish those filters and then only return the data that you want. So for example, let's have some filters. Maybe we will go with binders and maybe only corporate, and then we'll keep the region as West. So now I just push to apply those filters, and then it's only going to return that information I'm interested in. So this is the opposite of having all of the information in there and then narrowing it down. So from a performance standpoint, this is going to be a lot more performant. You're only returning the information you're interested in rather than returning all of the information and choosing which of it you want. So this is really quite easy. I'm just going to rebuild this with the easy button. So we'll just drag that back out and then we'll reprogram that action. So we'll hide that title and we'll actually just turn on that quick filter. So this filter is going to apply these, but we need to change it a little bit because that's not really what it's meant to do. So what we can do is go into dashboard, actions, and we'll see that our quick filter is already here, but we want to edit it. We want it to work a little bit differently than it does. So these are kind of the default settings for a filter action, but we want to change it to that last item, that exclude all values. And we want it to be easy button to sheet 13. Okay, one more time, it's going to think. And now if I click it, it's going to kind of enable that filter for the first time. So let's change a couple of things here. Click it one more time, and it's going to return only that information I'm interested in. So really the crux of this is one, that button that's really easy to make. And then secondarily, it's going to be this setting right here that really kind of goes unnoticed. I don't think I've used it before learning this trick, So using the exclude all values, it's going to clear everything out when you click off effectively. All right. So let's go to a pretty common use case. Let's say you're kind of running out of space on your dashboard, but you need a key and you need a filter. What am I going to do? Putting the two of them on the dashboard can sometimes look a little ugly. So why not combine the two together? So here I can click on furniture. We know that blue means blue means blue, and it's going to filter that out. So how do we build something like this? Well, let's go ahead and try it. So the best way to remember how to create a filter / key is just to put the same item over and over in a couple different places. So here we'll grab category, we'll put it on columns, we'll put category onto label, we'll put category onto color. So if we wanted it to be text just like this, we could keep that. I'm going to make it a square, and I'm going to make this larger. But the problem is when we make it larger, they start to run into each other. It looks kind of funny. So the trick is actually to pull category on here, and then it's going to straighten everything out a little bit. The last thing we want to do is hide these headers. Maybe center that, make it look nice. And I'd probably make these bigger as well. But once we add it into our view, we can turn on that quick filter and it's automatically going to filter each of these items. So that's a fun one, especially from a design perspective. It's going to be compact, very informative, and also interactive. All right, so coming down to our last couple of tips here, we've almost made it. So let's say I get to this dashboard and I see that, well, my hex map isn't really optimized for this shape, that needs to go. So I want to switch out my maps for a different map. How do I do that? Well, of course I can delete this and it's going to reshape everything, and then I can try and find my new map and kind of shove it in there wherever it fits. And oh, that's not quite right. Let me show you an alternative. I'm gonna Command Z through this and go back to where we were. So if we want to just swap one view out, we can activate that view. So I'm clicked on it, I see all the options here. And then when I kind of slide down my sheet options, I have this little L icon. It's an arrow, it's a backwards L. So that's going to be a swap sheet option. So let's go ahead and put that dual axis in there as instead. So I tend to prefer that interaction a lot more than deleting, dragging out, resizing, putting everything where it's supposed to be. So we could just keep doing this all day if we wanted to. If we wanted to put this guy in there, we can switch that out. We could, you could just keep going. So very quick way to switch all of your views without having to mess too much with the resizing and things like that. All right, so we're going to end our workbook with another human factors check. Let's say that our coworker comes over and asks us, hey, what date field did you use for that workbook? Did you use ship date? You were supposed to use ship date. Did you use ship date? And we have an internal panic for a very brief moment because we used order date instead. What can we do? Well, mostly we can right click and we can do replace references. So as the heading suggests, we can replace all references to order date with, let's say, ship date. And if we click OK, then we can actually backtrack. Whoa, that's not supposed to happen. I think that first one went a little crazy. What we can do, maybe we'll just undo out of that. Let's see if that actually worked with that error. Let's just delete that and try that again, actually. So let's go to order date, replace, we'll do a ship date. Okay. So now we could actually see this change from order date to ship date. So keep that in mind, the LOD is still locking down to the order date, but it's a very quick way to switch a lot of fields out at once, especially if there's maybe a change in the database and that's kind of flowing into your workbook, you can very quickly switch out the wrong pills for the right ones. All right, so let's go ahead and jump back into PowerPoint for a very brief moment. Hello, Excel spreadsheet. All right, so I think looking at the time, are there any kind of outstanding questions, Steve, or anything that we could kind of discuss before we wrap up?
Yeah, just a couple of things. First off, great job, Brianna. As much as I use Tableau and you seem to I forget sometimes some of these things. So it was a great refresher for me on some things, and I learned a few things. One of the things that I didn't know was the whole switching the views in a dashboard. You clicked on that little icon, like you selected the view that you wanted to switch out, and then you clicked it and swap that sheet with another sheet. Um, One question with that. I'm assuming you're using 2020.3 Tableau
I
Desktop.
am.
Do you know how long that capability has been in the product? I haven't seen it, and somebody was asking because they were like, "Hey, I've never seen that. Is that specific to 2020.3?"
That's a great question. I actually picked this one up in the last couple of months, so I could probably dig for it actually, but yeah, as long as I've been using that, I suppose it's been there. But I would
Okay,
guess it would be relatively recent.
okay.
Hey Steve,
So
sorry, this is Rob. I believe it was 2019.2 or .3.
okay, good. Thanks, Rob. So fairly new, within probably about a year and a half old. Um, but it's that's a pretty handy trick. Um, Real quick, you showed that hex map, which was really cool. Can you show the data sheet for that real quick?
Yeah, do you want the underlying like Excel sheet?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually got this from Kevin Taylor. He's one of the SEs on our team. There's a blog, so search Tableau Hex Map. It's a blog, and this sheet is in there. So there's some people at risk of going too in detail. There's some people that do hex maps and they plot each point on the hexagon for each state. I wouldn't recommend that one. There's a lot of rows in it. This one I like. It's just succinct. It gives you the X coordinate, the Y coordinate, the state. So search for Tableau Hex Maps. There's a blog, and this should be in there that you can download directly from the blog.
Perfect. Thank you. Um, let's see. I think that was it. We had a flurry of questions, and hopefully we got to everything. We really tried. But thanks so much, Brianna. This was fantastic. It was, I learned something every time I I watch these tips and tricks. So great job. Let's see. In I guess one other thing, we can have access to this workbook. Can you maybe put it up on Tableau Public, and then I can link um, the YouTube video to this workbook in Tableau Public? Because everybody
Absolutely.
is loving it and wanting to download it so they can try this at home.
I am flattered. I would be happy to do that.
Cool. So everybody, please go to Tableau Tuesdays YouTube channel. That's I'll put that again in the chat, and that has all of our past uh, recordings. It has 2 years worth, and this one should be up later this week. And we will have a link to this workbook, so you can go ahead and look at all these great tips, see the underlying data, see the amazing calculations, how Brianna got everything to work, and then you can go and try this on some of your visits. Um, I've also been asked a few times about next year's Tableau Tuesdays. Tableau Tuesdays will continue. It will continue on next year, the second Tuesday of every month. Um, what I will do, because we are hoping for a more formal registration page on tableau.com, which will be much easier for you guys to register and see all the different topics that we're going to be covering next year. I'm hoping to get that up here in the next week or so. You will be. I will make sure that I will post something on our YouTube channel about next year and the agenda, as well as I will try to reach out to send a blast an email to everybody, just reminding you that and inviting you to Tableau Tuesdays for next year. And yes, Sherry, what we're hoping is you can sign up once for all the Tableau Tuesdays instead of one by one. That is my goal. I'm hoping we can get that done through our marketing department to make it easier on you guys. So keep an eye out on that. Please go to the YouTube channel, subscribe. We're going to be adding a ton more. Right now, the YouTube channel is pretty much just Tableau Tuesdays and the playbacks of all our amazing content over the last couple of years. But we're going to be adding a lot more content starting very soon. I'm just working on a few different things to clean up, and then we're going to just start little tiny what we call Tableau shorts. Little 5-minute or less videos of a great tip or an introduction to a feature that maybe we don't need to spend a whole hour on, but it's really great to know. So we'll be having these little short videos out there for you guys to consume at your leisure. We're going to be starting to do individual product update recordings and posting them up on the YouTube channel rather than doing a product update. What normally in the past years we've done product update webinars twice a year. But rather than that, I think we're just going to do, hey, here's what's new in 2020.4. Here's what's new in 2020 or 2021.1. Those types of things, and just have those videos up there for you guys to consume. So we hope you guys found this year's worth of items valuable. I'm going to post in the chat. God, this is dangerous because I'm sure my inbox is going to get flooded, but I'm going to post my email address in the chat. If you guys have any ideas for somebody asked like, hey, can I add some ideas on when we do tips and tricks next time, some tips to cover? Yes, email me and we'll be sure to include those. If you have ideas on what you think a topic might be really valuable to you, the reason why we do this is for you guys. It's not for us. So please, if there's something that we're not covering, absolutely go ahead and send me an email, and we'd love to look into it and try to cover it for you in 2021. Also, we just got a question, will we post the Q&A as well? I'm going to see if I can do that. I've never tried doing that before. Hopefully we can, and if I can, I'll post the Q&A so you can see all the questions that were asked and all of our answers, because it was a mad rush. I think we had 72 questions in the course of the last hour. So thank you so much for a great year. Please come back next year. We'd love to see you and make Tableau Tuesdays even better. Stay safe. Have a great holiday season, and we will see you in January. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.